from the south, house of the eternal sun, may right action reap the harvest, so we may enjoy the fruits of planetary being. From above, house of heaven, where star people and ancestors gather, may their blessings come to us now. From below, house of earth, may the heartbeat of her crystal core bless us with harmonies to end all war. From the center, galactic source, which is everywhere at once, may everything be known as the light of mutual love. Ayum hunapaku, Eva Maya Emaho. Ayum hunapaku, Eva Maya Emaho. Ayum hunapaku, Eva Maya Emaho. Buenos dias a todos los quines planetarios. Good morning, planetary kin. It's a beautiful new day. This is the day Yellow Galactic Star. And for us, it's a special moment to honor our ancestors because it happens to be the galactic signature of Valum Votan's father, who was Mexican. And so in honor of Enrique Arguelles, I wanted to speak a little Spanish to begin, to remember all of our brothers and sisters south of the border who live in Mexico, and also all of the brothers and sisters who live here in the United States of America, for there is a huge Spanish-speaking population here. So it's a very good thing to remember that there are many languages for this planet Earth. So I'll begin by reading the planetary kin for today, which is kin number 8. So it's code number 8 for the solar seal of the star. It's tone 8, and it's kin number 8. So we have a very galactic day. Kin 8, yellow galactic star. I harmonize in order to beautify. Modeling art, I seal the store of elegance with the galactic tone of integrity. I am guided by the power of free will. This is a part of the daily reading that is done, which brings us in touch with the synchronic order, which is the theme for today, the law of time, synchronic order. And in the morning, we'll be speaking about the context. Time is the fourth dimension. In addition to reading the kin for the day, we also work with the Telektonon prophecy of Pakal Votan, and according to the Telektonon, this is the 23rd day of the planetary dog moon. It's a Monday, and we are in the navigation tower. So for those of you who practice the Telektonon, this means this is the day of the lovers' reunion, when Pakal Votan has completed his journey and he meets Bolon Ik in the lovers' tower, the navigation tower. So I read from the card, Navigation Tower, Bolon Ik's Tower of Weaving, Tower of Prophecy Complete, 2013. Earth-Uranus Time Tunnels Complete. galactic synchronization, emerge from the warrior's labyrinth to celebrate the reunion of Valum Votan and Bolonic, fulfill the sounding of the galactic chord of the fifth force, experience the evolutionary illumination of Kanich Ahau and the 26,000-year renewal of the galactic life cycle. Tower of Power, enjoy heaven on earth. This whole 7-day seminar fulfills the 4th week of the planetary moon. And so for this week, it's Become Victory of Prophecy. The next part of the reading is from the Telektonon book itself, the Telektonon Prophecy. And we always read according to the kin for the day, which is the star, the kin 8. So for the star section, we read the heptagonon of mind. People of the dawn, people of the book, children of the day of truth, to safeguard as long as possible the teachings of the original ones from the confusion of the Tower of Babel, God divided the earth by its one great ocean into great island masses called continents. And most far from Babylon was Americua, and also distant was Australia and the island kingdoms of Polynesia. Even in Africa, close by to Babylon, for many great cycles were the people of the dawn protected in their natural wisdom. But inexorable is my count of days, inexorable the rolling of the wheel of time, inexorable the law of the cube. Telektonon is the name of the blessing received by those who master the law of the cube. Great is the power of God, whose power and blessing are ever close and near. Foursquare the manifest action of radiance from the divine intersection of God's presence, divine mind, divine spirit, divine will, divine source from which the cube is sprung. Foursquare the cube, the measure of Telektonon, one vast, far-spreading word which is no word at all, but number, multiplying itself from within God's unending meditation, which we choose to call creation. From one intersection, 6 directions plus the 7th, the moving center of time, the navel of heaven, whose cord is a fiber called Kuksan Sum. From the navel of heaven to the solar plexus runs the Kuksan Sum, highway that reaches to the roots of the stars, passing through each of the heavenly dimensions. I who say this know, for I am Valum Votan, who left for you a talking stone, Telektonon. Time's special witness am I, God's spy holding vigil, keeping the sacred count of days, exposing to you the lie of Babylon, the falsification of the cube into the Tower of Babel. Who now but I can tell you that 7 are the directions of the cube, the heptagonon of mind, 12 are the gates, 16 the powers, moved by the 9 great powers of time. These 16 powers become the number of the elect of the cube, 144. Multiplied by the millennium, 144 becomes 144,000, sacred number of days I laid for prophecy to know during my first Baktun count. And continuing with the synchronic order from the dynamics of time, the dynamics of time are read on the basis of the kin number and the tone for the day. So I read from the dynamics of time 8.8, another theme. In yoga, the ACCA functions are activated by conscious respiration as the dialectic of a moving inverse bilateral symmetry correlated with the spine and central nervous system. Hatha yoga and other related systems of psychophysical auto-regulation work toward the establishment of a flexible biohomeostasis centralized in the spine, in the spinal column and central nervous system with its attendant psychophysical centers, the chakras. So from the dynamics of time, that brings us very immediately to this present moment. So take a moment to feel your spine and to take a good inhalation and a good exhalation. And for a moment, just feel your respiration. And now, I would just simply like to complete a few details from yesterday, because yesterday's theme had been the 13 moon calendar change peace movement. I just wanted to let you know that there are a series of booklets that are connected to the peace movement that will give you the whole background and the process by which we have taken the calendar change around the planet. The first one we had shown you yesterday was the World 13 Moon Calendar Change booklet. And then the next, in the year 96, we did the first Planetary Congress of Biospheric Rights. And then in 97 in Japan, the Law of Time and Judgment Day Tribunal. And then in 1999, the World Congress on Peace and Time, which was held in Costa Rica. So each of these booklets actually explains the process of the presentation of the calendar change peace movement. And then finally, we wanted to just acknowledge that this calendar change peace movement is a global movement. So I wanted to simply hold up, this is one version of the calendar from Japan, showing the planetary moon. And then I wanted to acknowledge a calendar from Austria. And then the calendar from Brazil. And the calendar from Mexico. And finally, one of the many calendars that are made here in the United States in English. So all of that was simply by way of letting you know that this is the World 13 Moon Calendar Change Peace Movement. Now, since it happens to be the lovers' reunion today, it's kind of a nice moment to introduce my husband today. And I think he has a little surprise for you. So let's see who shows up today.
I understand that you were visited yesterday by a messenger, and I impolitely remember something that Jesus said about prophets and messengers, that a prophet, it is only in his own hometown and in his own house that a prophet is never honored, correct? That makes a very interesting situation. So we heard about that this messenger came here, and he seems to have come from this town around here and from this country, and maybe that accounts for some of his behavior. However, I'm glad that we have good humor today. So I'm here to help the messenger today. My name is Dr. Arcturus. Okay? My name is Dr. Arcturus. I come from a star 40 light years away. And that's often called the shepherd star. And of course that comes from olden times on your planet, when the shepherds were in charge of keeping the flocks, and always had to make sure that all the sheep were in order. And I think one of your messengers also, Jesus, spoke of himself as being a shepherd, and he also came from Arcturus. And in fact, a lot of the people that we call messengers or prophets have something to do with that star. Well, my name is Dr. Arcturus, and I understand that you have some kind of problem here on this planet, okay, that we're talking about here. you call this Earth. Where we come from, we call this Velitropa 24.3. Earth is just an earthly term, if I can be so blunt. But from where we come from in Arcturus, we're a somewhat more evolved star than your star, which you call the Sun, which is actually a star. Most people don't take cognizance of the fact that this planet of yours, Velitropa 24.3, is actually orbiting around a star. That's the Sun, as you call it, is a star like many, many other stars in the galaxy. In fact, we better locate ourselves a little better. Yes. No, it's upside down. I know. I know where I come from. Okay, here. Here we are. So this is a better view. You've often, I understand that you're living in a bad time, so you have a very stunted view of yourselves and of your Earth and of your universe. So I thought we better, as they say, get the big picture. Okay? And the big picture for our purposes is the galactic picture. Okay? The galaxy, from our point of view, the galaxy is the main system that we're operating with. It's a galaxy. There are how many galaxies there are in the universe? Literally billions, okay, and billions of galaxies in what we call the visible universe. Of course, the visible universe is just the third-dimensional universe. We're not talking about the other 6 universes. We're just talking about this universe, which is just the smallest and the lowest universe in the whole order of universes. The order of universes roughly corresponds also to the different dimensions or scales. If we say there are 7 different scales of universe, 7 dimensions, actually there are 7 dimensions, and then there are 6 mirror universes as well to mirror the universes 1 to 6. So where we are, and this of course is galactic center, which some of our Mayan colonists on your planet refer to as Hunab-Ku. Okay, Hunab-Ku, which is the galactic center, which is also actually, the galactic center is actually the access also to what we call the mind of God. Hunab-Ku is the one giver of movement and measure. You can see the movement of your galaxy. It's different spiral arms going round and around. And this galaxy, by your measurements, is approximately 100,000 light years across. Okay, it's just a small galaxy. There are many other galaxies, but in this galaxy, a galaxy represents the entire spectrum of evolutionary possibility of what we refer to as the evolution of time. And what we refer to as the evolution of time really is the evolution of time as consciousness. Because you cannot separate time from consciousness. When you truly become aware of time, in time you become conscious. When you are unconscious, you are out of time. You are not in time at all. So here we are. Where are we here in all of this? Well, let's see. Fortunately, the people who made this map, we are right there. It says, you are here. Okay? And interestingly enough, where we are, this map was designed by the National Geographic Society. It says the millennium in maps, whatever that actually means. Since the millennium, what does the millennium mean to Hunab-Ku? What paltry measurements are we using from that point of view? Where we are is defined, interestingly enough, we are in what's called the Orion arm. of the galaxy. And the map makers have been very, very kind to me. My agent on Earth, Jose Arguelles, is one of his names, wrote a book, wrote several books, too many books. Poor guy. But he wrote one book called The Our Planet Chronicles in 1981, in which we first reminded him of his origin on Arcturus. And that basically represents the view from Arcturus. And then in 1992 or so, we told him to do another book called The Arcturus Probe. And so he dutifully did that book in about 6 weeks' time, which explains the cosmology of your planet. Well, when we say velatropa means the turning of vela. And vela means the light or the candle. The turning of vela. Now, it's very interesting that our agent on Earth, Jose Arguelles, had this definition in 1981 and made it very precise in 1992. And that, interestingly enough, the turning of vela defines what's called the experimental zone. The experimental zone. The galactic epic of free will takes place in the experimental zone. This is Satan's favorite playground. That's where he gets to play with everybody's free will. So this experimental zone is defined by Vela's turning. Now, as it turns out, to turn a phrase, National Geographic has defined the area of where we are, where it says you are here. It has defined that area by a 6,000 light-year circumference defined by the star Vela. So unless someone there was secretly reading the books of our agent Arguelles, which is possible but dubious, because nowhere on this galaxy map does it mention Arcturus, though it does mention Antares and Sirius, but it doesn't mention the Pleiades either. So there's some inner prejudices there. But interestingly enough, our neighborhood is defined by the star Vela. What is Vela? Vela is the remnant of a supernova, which is now a pulsar star. It means it's pulsing messages at a very rapid rate. And it actually says where our star is, which is from the point of view of Arcturus, where our star is the center of this zone defined by Vela. So the 6,000 light-year circumference of Vela, where Vela turns, is the experimental zone. That's the Velatropa sector, as it's defined in the Arcturus probe. And in the very, very center of the Velatropa sector is our little teeny-weeny star, which, from point of view of Arcturus, is called Velatropa 24. The Maya called it Kinich Ahau. The Greeks called it Apollo or Helios, and hence we have such terms as the heliosphere or the heliocosm, which define the entire solar system of the star. So where we are, Velatropa 24.3, thank you. Velatropa 24.3 means that we are the third planet out from Velatropa 24. Just very simple designation, nothing sentimental about it. Today is the day galactic star. We especially made this sign. It is the eighth of the 20 solar seals, and today it is coded by tone 8. So we have 8 and 8, and it is also kin number 8. So we have 3/8, which equals 24, or as we write it, 24. So this is why this day especially is a sign of the Arcturus, because it refers specifically to Velatropa 24. So that's because we have tone 8, code number 8, so that's the 8th seal, and then kin number 8 in the sequence of 260 kin. 3 times 8 is 24. Also, I've been told that you need to learn. Those of you who are back again today, I assume you are willing to learn. So I'm going to write a definition that we had yesterday so that we can make it very clear. Today we're talking about time as art. Okay, so I've worn my time as art jacket. So when I'm writing on the board, you have something pretty to look at. This is the definition of calendar from the point of view of the law of time. A calendar is an instrument for harmonizing consciousness with the universal cycles according to the synchronic order. That's the definition of calendar from the point of view of the law of time. Boy, this is a messy pen. Yeah. Text. Aha, I knew I left something out, and I have to revert to this messy pen. According to the, here we got it. This makes it easier. This way, you know, I understand if we're using this board up here and scribbling away, then, you know, now we're in the classroom, okay? So we can all relax there. I remember what classrooms are like. You got the nutty professor. It's going to be okay, everybody, okay? According to the mathematical principles of the synchronic order. Okay? There. So that's the definition of calendar. Okay, now we want to, that's what we were talking about yesterday, the definition of calendar, and that we were pointing out that since time is of the mind, right? We said no one that you ever knew touched time, okay? No one has the fingerprint of time, okay? No one, you can touch and feel space, boom, 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 space. But you can't touch and feel time. Time is not tactile, as they say. Time is of the mind. So therefore, the instruments of measure of time that you use, such as the calendar, actually shape and affect the mind. If the instrument of measure that you are using is irregular and inaccurate, as is in the instrument known as the Gregorian calendar, well then it is going to produce states of mind that are irregular, irrational, illogical, inaccurate. As we have often said, if you were going to build a house and you were given the ruler with uneven units of measure, what would your house look like? Okay? So this is the house of the mind that we have built in another one of those books that our agent Arguelles wrote called The Mayan Factor. He speaks of the mental houses, okay, and that the last mental house that has been created, the mental house is the whole mental field, the resonant field, the collective mind of the human species. The final mental house that was constructed on this planet was constructed using the measurements of the Gregorian calendar and the mechanical clock. So that house has very fantastic appearance. It has jet planes and super duper airports. And it has mass mayhem, violence, murder, war, and biospheric collapse and disease and all the other bad things that we can't seem quite to get away from. As one person has put it, the human species, as a result of living in this mental house, living in this mental house, prefers crime to utopia. We prefer focusing on legislation or problems that somehow or other define crime. Right? We'd rather think of our idea of peace as how to build a new international criminal court, for instance, rather than thinking, gee, what is peace and how do we really, really establish peace? Okay, so that's what we say. This mental house that's defined by the 1260 order, 12-month irregular Gregorian calendar, 60-minute mechanical clock. This mental house was established in 1582 when Pope Gregory XIII of the Vatican instituted the Gregorian calendar form at a precise moment in history when the Europeans, mostly financed by the Vatican, had circumnavigated the globe, had completely taken possession of North and South America and many other parts of the world in between. Wherever they landed, they laid claim. And that simultaneous to that moment was the completion of the evolution of what we call the mechanical clock. The mechanical clock was in place at the same time as the Gregorian calendar, and that established the foundation for the final mental house. The Maya defined the final mental house as the 13th Baktun, which is the cycle of time from 1618 to the end of 2012. And this final Baktun, we have a Baktun map, I think, right there. Right here, see? Sure we do. Back to the Baktun map, okay? This is the scientific gauge of the measure of history from 3113, as you recall, to 2012 down here. And that this 13th, the calendar reform came about 2 Katuns before the end of the 12th Baktun. And then when we get to the beginning of the 13th Baktun, which was in 1618, then you have the complete enslavement of the human consciousness by the 1260 timing frequency, that it is the dominating unconscious frequency. So that in 1618 to the present time, you have the complete takeover of the 1260 timing frequency, dominating absolutely all human affairs. That's good, thank you. This timing frequency, which gives rise basically to such things as the philosophy of time is money, we have to understand, is an unconscious frequency based on the acceptance of standards of measure of time which are irregular and mechanistic. And once those, as we said, time is of the mind, the instruments of measure that you use actually then feedback and shape the mind. And so the mind then becomes in that way. That's how you could come up with such a primitive definition of a calendar, such as was given to you yesterday, in which takes no account of the role of human mind and consciousness. So That's because this 1260 frequency, once it is unconsciously accepted and adopted, then continuously separates and alienates the human species farther and farther from the natural cycles. So we have the possibility of the creation of such an absolutely artificial civilization as we have today. It's absolutely artificial. We tout virtual reality okay, as one of the great values and of the present time, for instance, and that's extreme alienation of the mind from nature. This is also part of an inevitable process, which we will be dealing with more as we go along. We're now just introducing you to the fact that we are in the beginning stages of understanding the law of time and the cosmology of time. Okay? That in this mental house, as a result of adopting to a frequency, 1260 frequency, irregular 12-month calendar and mechanistic 60-minute hour, that the first phase of that is the creation of what's called the scientific revolution, which is really the revolution of scientific materialism, or materialistic science, which is about a 100-year process from Galileo through Newton, from 1618 to about 1727. And once all the principles of mechanistic materialistic science, remember during this period of time that the image of God was that God was a clockmaker and the universe is a clock. And once he made that clock, he said, I'm going to take a nap. So the mythology went, and the scientists could come around it and tinker. Remember Tinker Toys? So when the first phase, the establishment of all the principles of science were done, then those principles were applied. All of those principles were based on the mechanization of time. And the mechanization of time, the clock was the first machine. And so on that basis, with the mechanization of time, then could come the creation of other machines. Once all the principles were worked out of the materialist science, then came the second phase, and that's called the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution from 1727 well into the present time. But the major part of the Industrial Revolution, which established the modern world, was another 100-year period up to the middle of the 19th century. By the middle of the 19th century, then you had not only the mechanization of time, but the mechanization of space through locomotives and the creation of industry which uses the natural resources, creating, and then this is where the beginning of the ecological imbalance is, because then you've established a society that creates more waste than it can get rid of. And so then this begins the pollution and the degradation of the biosphere. The biosphere, incidentally, refers to the thin film of life and its support system that cover the surface of your planet there. That bio-life sphere, the sphere around the planet of the sphere of life. So once the Industrial Revolution happened, what the law of time, what the analysis of the law of time is able to state is that it was because of the unconscious adoption to the machine frequency that the genetic code of the species itself began to accelerate, and this is the root of the beginning of the population bomb. As I said, in 1750, 500 million humans. In 1840, 1 billion humans. In 1930, 2 billion humans. In 1960, 3 billion humans. In 2000, 6 billion humans. That curve of acceleration, exponential acceleration, is a function of the human being adopting to this unconscious timing frequency. Unconscious means it didn't even know it was doing it. Okay? That it just went along and said, wow, and came the doctrine of progress, that we're going to have heaven on earth. That's what the doctrine of progress said. You go back and read those people like Adam Smith back in the middle 18th century. That's what they were talking about. They said, wow, in 100 years we're going to have heaven on earth. We'll eliminate poverty. Everyone will have plenty. But then, of course, into the equation was the fact that the only way that this machine could accelerate was through the creation of what is called a capitalist economy, okay, in which the main point was making profit off the machines and the natural resources that were being utilized by the machines to create the industrial society, which created further alienation from nature. So, as a result of the capitalism, there never was an end to poverty, and there never will be an end to poverty under this system. It's just absolutely like that. The rich, as they say, absolutely get richer. There were like 20 billionaires on the planet in 1985. Today, there's about 400 billionaires, and these 400 billionaires, who are virtually all in what we call the G7 countries, control as much wealth as the poorest 1/3 of the population, which means 400 billionaires control as much wealth as 2 billion poor people at the other end of the scale. Okay. That is called transgressing the balance of nature. We're transgressing the balance of nature through inequity of wealth. We're transgressing the balance of nature by ecological destruction and depletion of natural resources and creation of types and forms of waste that are greater than we can get rid of, such as radioactive waste. So all of this is a function of the adoption to the 1260 timing frequency. This is the analysis of the law of time, and at the root of it are two instruments: the clock and the calendar, which is really the Gregorian. Okay. Pope Gregory the 13th. If you go to the Vatican, inside St. Peter's, they have lots of tombs of some of the more prominent popes. It's interesting that just about the largest tomb and the largest sculpture is that of Pope Gregory the 13th. You'll see that too when you go up the staircase outside of St. Peter's. That's because they knew that with him, with Pope Gregory the 13th, that the Church had established a calendar that was represented what is called an accurate measure of the tropical year, but with no account of natural cycles and no account of the effect on the human mind and consciousness. But it was used, it was established at that point in time to place a yoke of church time on all the captured indigenous peoples and eventually on all the peoples of the planet, that this calendar was accepted. It was merely a very slight reform of what was called the Julian calendar. The clock, which is really what you're dealing with, is nothing but a circle in space, 360 degrees, divided into 12 parts by 12. So there's 30-degree segments there. This concept was already established at the beginning of history in Sumeria. The Sumerians had the concept of a sphere, dividing it into and also of a plane, a circle, plane in space, divided into 12 parts. Okay. This was also the basis of the first Babylonian calendar, which had 12 months of 30 days plus a 5-day period to account for the 365 years. The Gregorian calendar is based on the same principle of 12. So you have the 12 months but it's based on the same principle. It's derived from this principle. What are you looking at here? Okay, you're looking at a two-dimensional plane in space. When you look at any clock, or you go to, it's very interesting. If you go to Strasbourg Cathedral in Alsace-Lorraine, it's very interesting. If you go in there, it's a beautiful Gothic cathedral built in the 14th, 15th century, and then it's all dedicated to the Virgin Mary, but then they have on the one wing, there's a very interesting, in a chapel just off one of the central wings, off the central part of the church, there's a huge mechanical clock. And this mechanical clock, and this is the triumph of the mechanization of time over the feminine principle, which is otherwise enshrined by the Virgin in whose honor this church is built. The clock, this form here, the schema of a two-dimensional plane in space, was the final way of absolutely dominating what is referred to, what we might refer to as the feminine principle, or the lunar principle. A two-dimensional plane in space, and all the first clocks had the same thing, and many traditional watches still have that. You have a face there with the hands moving around that clock. That's just a measurement of increments of space. That has nothing to do with time. And from this, of course, then we create the concept of linear time. It's interesting that this two-dimensional plane in space, a circle, then gives rise to the concept, here we have 3D time. Time is the fourth dimension, okay? 3D time, and this gives rise to the idea of linear time. There's no circulation. This is your 12-month calendar, 1, 2, 3, up to the 12th month. When you get to 12, you go back to here. But it's not understood as a cycle. It's understood as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then another one and another one. This is what's called the arrow of time, small t. And this is the linear concept of time. I mentioned that the astronomers on the Commission of Time have come to the agreement that January 1st, 4713 BC is the beginning of the linear computation of historical time. And so what does this do? We could write some characteristics here. Third dimensional time, which is really an error in time. This is not time. This is not time. This is a two-dimensional plane in space with hands mechanized to go around it to give you the illusion that it's time. So this is why it's called an error in time, and this based on the principle of 12. 12 is a static complex number. It is not a number of movement. So this creates what's called what we call, from the point of view of Arcturus, whose phone is that? They weren't supposed to call for me yet. From the point of view of Arcturus, this creates what we call the flat world, okay? The linear flat world of entropic time, okay? Because time has been separated from the mind, time has been separated from consciousness, time has been mechanized and separated from the natural cycles and the natural orders, the universal cycles. And so this creates the flat world. We live in the flat world. We live in the flat world that's created by linear time. There's that phone again. I'll take a drink of water. You know, Einstein said time is the fourth dimension. But after that, he didn't say anything. Time was reduced to this small function and considered to be like this arrow of time. Okay, the famous arrow of time. Okay. He didn't say anything more about it because he actually didn't know from the measurements and tools and instruments that he was using. He didn't know what else to say about it. Of course, people write and talk about the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is the dimension of time, which is the same as the dimension of mind, which is why we speak of the evolution of time as consciousness. What Einstein couldn't further define, another scientist, a Russian scientist, Vladimir Vernadsky, was able to give the reason why Einstein couldn't define the fourth dimension any further. Vernadsky knew, and he wrote this in 1944 at the end of his life. Vernadsky was a Russian scientist who was born in about 1874 and died in 1945, and is responsible for everything we know about the biosphere. Okay, he was really the first environmentalist. He wrote his book on the biosphere in 1926. He was a whole systems thinker. He began his career as a crystallographer and a geochemist, and then he went on to define phenomena of life on the surface of the earth as functions of biogeochemistry, and defined human civilization as a function of the evolving geology of the earth. Now, once he had gotten to a point in 1926 where then he finally defined the principles of the biosphere. He spent the rest of his life, for the next almost 20 years, writing and completing his research on the biosphere. Incidentally, he also was, along with Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit biologist, the one responsible for also creating the notion of the noosphere, okay, which we'll be talking about later, the noosphere. He actually said that the biosphere is evolving, and we're coming to a critical point where the biosphere will transform into the noosphere. The biosphere is the sphere of life on Earth. The noosphere is the mental envelope of Earth. So we're dealing, actually, you know, what we're doing this week? We're actually going to the point where we are waking up the soul of the earth. That's what we're doing this week. Okay? We'll get to that point. Save that. So, Vernadsky said, we know everything about the biosphere, but we don't know the relationship of time to the biosphere. And the reason we don't know the relationship of time to the biosphere is because all of our measurements of time are actually derived from measurements of space. And we will never understand time by using the measurements of space. Those were virtually Vernadsky's last words. He died shortly after that. And so the problem of time in the biosphere was left unresolved until the discovery of the law of time. And the law of time supplied the rest of the answers. And the law of time supplied the answers and showed also that the answers lay not in Occidental science or not even in Chinese science, but in Mayan science from ancient times. And that is a part of what is referred to as the Mayan factor, the overlooked factor in history. We think that everything that has any value originated in the old world, that anything that has any value came from Europe, anything that has any value came from Greece and Rome, anything that has any value came from Europe, anything that has any value was invented by an American. And we think that if it was conquered or destroyed, that it has no longer any living value. And so The archaeologist can write about the Mayan calendar as if it has no living value. The one archaeologist that I was citing yesterday says the Maya used the tzolk'in from about 1500, or the Mesoamericans used the tzolk'in from maybe about 1000 BC until 1580 AD. That's not true. Besides, people here, and there's many Mayan day keepers who still use the tzolk'in. But that's the mindset of the conqueror. If they conquer, okay, whatever the people were using no longer has any living value. And that's a great error. And so this is also part of the message of the Mayan factor. So the law of time supplies the answer. And so we'll be going into that. That time is the fourth dimension. Now when we talk about when we talk about third dimensional time, we're talking about time that's linear. It's inexorable. That's the arrow of time. It is anti-cosmic. It is anti-natural. It is rooted in perceptions of a past and a future. This inexorable also, for instance, is like the doctrine of what's called progress. Its philosophy is time is money. All human values are reduced to monetary units. If you're drunk and missed work, it's not so much what's your problem as you cost the company X dollars today. Time is money. That's the value system. Technology, material technology, is what it creates. State of mind is alienation, and ultimately ends up in entropy, an entropic situation. In other words, the Americans, quote unquote, won the Cold War, but they want to rebuild the Pentagon by 2013. The Americans supposedly won the Cold War, but they want to build a new anti-missile ballistic system. That's called entropic. Oh, I forgot one other word. Entropy is maintained by institutions. And institutions include government, taxes, and police, okay? And all the laws and everything else, okay? So that's all, you know, back in the 1960s, which was really a long time ago, if you consider the amount of change that has occurred. If the population was 3 billion in 1960, and it's 6 billion today. That's double. So it was a very, very different world back then. Everybody who was bright in college, for instance, in this country, knew this. And that's why they were out in the streets. And they said, you know, stop the machine. They knew that, okay? But the machine is inexorable. It's the machine that propagates and multiplies at a faster rate than the human species, that keeps the human species going at an ever faster rate, both in its propagation and its rate of speed. Back in the 1960s, it was really rare for anyone to fly in an airplane. Now, the big airline terminals are like super-graduated Greyhound bus terminals packed with people. Or if you're in really good, fancy place like Frankfurt, Germany, it looks like a G7 shopping mall. But that's the essence of global civilization, is in those airports, because we are dealing with 1260 speed. Everything is in speed, and you get on the airplane and you read the airline magazines, and they're all it is the latest technologies to help you talk to somebody. You get on the airplane here in this country, and you have the little telephone in the seat in front of you, giving the second-to-second Dow Jones stock market. You can't get away from it, imprinting it in your brain. Moses had a hard time with his people. He said, "You're worshiping the golden calf." The golden calf today is, in this country, is the stock market. They're very proud of the fact that most middle-class Americans now are invested in the stock market. And 76% of the people who they expect are going to vote for the presidential elections in this country this year are invested in the stock market. That tells you something. That's all of this stuff right here. Completely. Okay? That's this value scale here. So when we talk about fourth dimensional time, we're talking about time that is cyclical, that actually is even spiral, and the cycle, of course, is based on the circle, but a moving circle. Okay. Okay, and that it's based on what's referred to as the radial matrix, which establishes what's called a now-centered cosmology. A radial matrix is like this, which is very different from a line. And of course a spiral, of course, is also very different from a straight line, cyclical spiral. So we're talking about such a radically different mindset and cosmology. This cosmology, what's when you take this arrow of time all the way back, what's back here? That's the Big Bang, the BB. Boom, okay? And then after the Big Bang, there goes the arrow of time, okay? And of course, when you read they say, and they really, really want to push this cosmology. I saw something in USA Today about a year ago saying how it's important for everybody to understand that this is finally it. We got the cosmology, but you read what it says, and it says, well, the scientists have figured out everything about the Big Bang, except for they can't tell you what happened in the first trillionth of a second. Well, if they can't tell me what happened in the first trillionth of a second, forget it. That's just a theory. And besides, if it was true that it was a Big Bang, and they can't figure out what happened in the first trillionth of a second, why don't they say, well, maybe God had a thought in that trillionth of a second, and his thought exploded into the universe. But in the triumph of the Industrial Revolution was what was called the dethroning of theology. God has no place. There's no place for God or any invisible outside factor or force. That's why they get all dumbfounded and invent things like parapsychology to try to explain these things. So parapsychology and all that stuff That's there because theology got dethroned. So we're talking about very radically different type of cosmology here. It's fractal. It's holographic, which means it's also holonomic. Holonomic means according to the law governing whole systems. Time is a whole system ordering principle. It's synchronic, which means that synchronicity is normal. Okay? Time is art rather than time is money. And instead of technology, you have telepathy. And instead of entropy, you have syntropy. Entropy is when all the energy goes out of things. Okay, everything gets dispersed and is ultimately disconnected. Okay, syntropy means when everything is turning together. Actually, when you look at the biology of life, we're very lucky. We live in a forest nearby here, and you can see when you take a walk in the forest that how all the different life forms are all together. And there's no such thing as a dead tree, because all the dead trees are sprouting new trees, and are sprouting ferns, and are sprouting different forms of fungus and everything like that. And everything is turning together. The world turns, and as the world turns, everything is turning with it. Like all the indigenous people know, black elk, and the man I was reading yesterday from Bolivia, that everything is moving in a circle. Everything is built in a circle. The birds build their nests in circles. The bees build their beehives in circles. They're all functioning with their own telepathy. They're all living in the synchronic order of fourth dimensional time. That's how they are functioning. Their visible manifestation, the third dimensional visible manifestation, is just their third dimensional manifestation. But the reality of what we might call their pre-conscious instinctual life is operating in the fourth dimension. I always love to watch the ants. They go back and forth. They don't run into each other. When they start take things much greater than their own weight, then they take them back into their little ant hill there. And they're all they say, gee, do they know each other? Their little antennae are out there. Hey Freddie, what you doing? No, they're just cruising. They really have it together. I mean, they have it more together than humans do. There's just no question about that. All the species actually have it more together than the humans do, because they're all living in the law according to the law of time. Okay? That's why all the different species, the dolphins, the whales, the fish, the birds, the insects, the animals, they're all living according to the law of time. They have their contracts with each other. It's all very divine economy. I mentioned yesterday this Warm Springs Museum on the other side of the mountain. And there's an interesting little display there. It's called The First Kill. Well, what's that about? It's about when the young boy goes out and shoots the first deer. Okay? Now, of course, they never shoot the first deer because they want to make sure there's another one. But when after he shoots that, he gives it all away. He gives his clothes away. He gives his gun away. He gives the deer away. He gives it all away. That's ecology, and that's economy. All the animals live like that, and originally we all live like that. It's not about what you can acquire and what you can hold on to. The minute you hoard anything, you've already committed a sin. You're out of balance. Sin is just being out of balance with the natural order. Sin is just not being in time, not living according to the law of time which governs completely the natural order. So these are some to help you. Definitions. We talk about third dimensional time, 1260 time if you want, and fourth dimensional time, which is 1320 time. So that if you want to write those down or it makes any sense to you, because I'm going to erase it soon. Okay? So, maybe. You know, you have in your text, if you have there, you have an illustration 2.4. That we can turn to that, okay, and we'll do. Where's my eraser? Oh, here we are. No, let's see. Everyone got the definition of the calendar? Here it goes. Didn't get it? Talk to your neighbor. Okay. The synchronic order. Time is the fourth dimension. You know, we talk. Yesterday we introduced the cyclic order, and then we have, which is the order of the cycles of life, and then we have the synchronic order. And the synchronic, what does that mean? Okay. Synchronic means the order of the universe that is happening all at the same time. Okay, everything happening at the same time. Everything is happening at the same time. We can take from this moment right here. At this moment right here, even though we can't see or extend our senses out beyond perhaps this room here, for the most part, that this actually, you know, we see the trees out there, the sky above, the earth below, and it extends. This is a whole thing. That's like what we showed you. Where's our galaxy picture again? Yeah, see? All of this, absolutely all of this is happening at one moment in time. That's the synchronic order. Everything happening at one moment in time. And it's everything happening together in time that actually holds the universe together. Okay, that the universe is a synchronic order. That everything, and you can find within this galaxy, one galaxy, which represents the entire system, okay, because the universe is made up of galaxies. That's why we speak of the galactic order. In the galactic order, absolutely every phase of evolution is happening simultaneously. You can find at the center of the galaxy the dense black hole, if you will, and you can find in the farthest out arms new stars that are forming. But when we talk about the galaxy and time as the evolution of consciousness, we are talking about the evolution of stars. We said we are on Velatropa 24.3. The local star is Velatropa 24, and as a star, it's a system that consists of all of the planets within that orbit around its central point. The galactic order establishes the form. You see how there's a center, and then the arms spiral out. What is constituted in those arms are all sorts of different stars, constellations of stars, star clusters. Some of the stars are new stars. Some of them are old stars. Vela is an old star. It's a pulsar remnant of an exploded supernova. According to the dynamics of time, a supernova is the point at which a star reaches maximum enlightenment and then explodes, as we call it. It's different states of consciousness, thought forms, if you will, into the rest of the galactic order and into the rest of the universe. Okay? For instance, the most recent supernova that was discovered was the 1987A supernova, just before the harmonic convergence. And that supernova was the first supernova that was experienced on the Earth or recorded on the Earth since before the beginning of the 13th Baktun. This is synchronic order. It happened in 1987 precisely because we're approaching the close of the cycle to 2012. And that supernova was seen and it exploded, followed by the harmonic convergence. And the effects of that supernova are still occurring. In 1997, that supernova attained a further state. It was overwhelming the astronomers because it was creating big rings and circles and doing all sorts of phenomenal things that seemed to defy anything that people could think of physically. Why? Because that's actually what we're looking at, is the manifestations of what we might call bodhisattvic consciousness extending out through an exploding star to give people information, to give intelligence information, I should say, in areas that are less evolved. This Velatropa sector, the experimental sector, is definitely a less evolved sector, but it's a place where the experiment of free will is occurring. And so, just like that star, then the supernova, then it reduces to a pulsar, but then a pulsar remains active. And that pulsar that defines the experimental zone, the Vela pulsar, is still pulsing at a very rapid rate. What's referred, I think they say it's at the okay. It's 0.0033 times a second. Okay, that's very fast pulsar. Okay, what is that? Okay, that's information that's pulsing. Okay, and the supernova sends out information. So we're talking about defining the cosmology of the law of time. The law of time is stated very simply by the formulation physicists wince when they see this. Energy factored by time equals art. As we say, that's why, as it says in your little brochure blurb, that's why you've never seen an ugly sunset. That's why everything in nature really is absolutely beautiful. It's true. God was and is a great architect and artist. And the instrument of design that God uses is the law of time. Everything in accord with the law of time becomes artful, becomes aesthetic. Yeah. So everything, when you wake up and you hear the birds in the morning, well, hey, how can you knock that? That's really something. Or in the evening, and you hear them doing their evening concerts, if you're fortunate enough to live out, as they say, in nature. So in this formulation, time is when we talked about in the definition of calendar, the mathematical principles of the synchronic order, time is a mathematical constant frequency ratio of 13 to 20. Okay? That's a constant that's throughout the universe, that maintains the synchronic order. Only the human species deviates from this mathematical constant frequency. Only the human species is operating on its own artificial frequency. We have never really experienced what civilization we could create with our mind and understanding of the whole system of the planet if we were operating on a natural timing frequency. Because the basis of that civilization would not be technology, but would be telepathy. And that's a totally different order of reality. So this is why it is said that the law of time, the discovery of the law of time, is the final discovery of the process and cycle of history. That it is the discovery of the law of time that creates the final of analysis of what, quote unquote, went wrong in history, and why the species cannot reach utopia, why it cannot create heaven on earth, why it only increases the amount of crime and suffering and inequality of wealth. And it also says that at the end of history, if you can understand this point, that you can exit from history, an honorable exit. Begin by following that 13-moon calendar, which is in accord with the law of time, because its mathematical principles are based on this 1320 timing frequency. So energy factored by time equals art, okay? And the timing frequency 1320, the energy, in our case, the energy is called DNA. That's the biological energy that creates the forms that we take. And that DNA, of course, has 64 constituent codons or code words. And so when the DNA is in the proper timing frequency, everything is art. And art isn't just something that a few special people do that's in a concert hall or in an art gallery or in a movie theater, but art is everything. We are time and we are art. This is the message of the law of time. And in this definition, there is no difference between science and art. In fact, there's no difference between science and art and spirituality, which is why we always have the banner of peace, the banner of peace in front there, which is the symbol, the three circles in the center. That's art. What we call art, science, and spirituality. Art, science is how we know. Okay, that's what science means. Okay? How we know. So when people say, well, I'm a scientist, well, that's just a very, very limited definition. Definition that's based on all of this. But everyone's a scientist, and just like everyone's an artist. Science is how we know something, how we know. And art is how we express what we know. It's very simple. There's no esoteric stuff to that. But when we're in the 1320 order, the art, how we know, and the science, how we know, and the art, how we do, is inseparable. It's natural, and it's a function of a spirituality. It's a spirituality that's a natural spirituality, because it is in accord with the law of time, with the 1320 timing frequency. So that's the law of time. Okay. Any form of energy. This is just an example. But, rocks and minerals. Okay. They're all artistic. People keep giving us these beautiful little rocks. And you see some crystals up here as well. And you see, well, they're forms of energy, silicon dioxide, other chemicals that in accord with the law of time take these phenomenal forms, which are basically all crystalline. All matter takes these crystalline forms, and the crystalline forms they all are aesthetic. They're all art. Or you can look at the trees. Everything about that tree out there, it's based on a phenomenal symmetry principle or principle of radial symmetry. It grows and its branches come out and the wind touches it. It's art. Everything is actually art. So we're in a situation where we have created, as I said, the human species has deviated from the law of nature, and so it is separated itself from the natural timing frequency, and so there's a lot of ugliness. And you can't go to hardly any city without seeing a lot of ugliness. Okay, human ugliness. The trash. Okay, we don't know what to do with all the trash. The things get old, the machines get old, we don't know what to do with them, and we trash them. Okay, and so you see how it's very hard to maintain a complete, what we call a complete aesthetic, because in the 1260 the amount of waste and the alienation is greater than the time and the capacity to create beauty, and so it's a losing struggle. Okay, so we just roll over and die, turn on the TV and forget it all. Okay. But this is the analysis of the law of time. In the dynamics of time, if you turn to that diagram there that you have in your book, I have a pretty color version of it here. Okay. That you see a large spherical form, which is divided in half, above and below. The upper half is telepathy, the lower half is instinct. And in the center is God, okay? The inevitable determining point, however you want to define that. There is this science here says that all that tree and all that stuff is just random. That symmetry and all these things are just random aspects of creation. No, wherever there is intelligence, wherever there is form, there is intelligence. Wherever there is form, there is purpose. You can't, create form without having a purpose. And the whole form of the universe has a directed purpose to it. So, however you want to call that, the Maya call that Hunabku, we call it God, we call it Allah, call it divine intelligence, the creator. However it is, that is what is governing the universe. That is the source of all knowledge, of all intelligence, of all form. And so, from the point of view of the evolution of time as consciousness, you have a movement that goes from the center in this direction here. It says energy released from source, and then it comes around like this. And in this lower quadrant, you see it says quantum dimensional space, or pure energy. That's where the quantum physicists are hanging out over there, trying to figure it out. And then you see that there's another line here, and this is the primary realm of what's called pre-life, and the other side is what's called the secondary realm. Life is, from the point of view of the law of time, life is a secondary reflex. First there's the crystal, then there's the DNA. That life is a secondary reflex. That life was created to reflect upon what we call the inorganic crystalline order, so that we move in this circle. Then we go when we get to life, we go from the atomic inorganic to the cellular organic and into the unconscious. This is the pre-conscious, okay, which is also a form of consciousness. And then this is over here in this quadrant, this is the unconscious realm. Well, this over here, this is where the 1260 civilization has developed, all of this stuff here. And it has all developed and was referred to as the cosmic unconscious. It's cosmic unconscious because we're not separated from the cosmos. So there's cosmic time, there's geological time, there's cyclical time. Okay, we're not separated from the cosmos, even though we're stupid. Okay. Yeah. We just haven't emerged from our stupidity into the cosmos. That's called the cosmic unconscious. And it's unconscious because it's very rare that any human being contain consciousness for more than 2 moments. You can do it. You can bring people to attention. Like I can say, okay, how many people are conscious here right now? How many are really, really, really here? How many have an unwavering mind at this moment? How many people have a mind that is absolutely pure and still with the words and the images that are occurring at this moment in this little time space? And how long can you maintain that? I'll keep talking, and you'll see how long you hold it. So we're going, and this civilization is basically is in the process of creating a tomb on Earth for the cosmic unconscious. That's why it's referred to as the Judgment Day moment to break out of the grave. Okay, when the graves are opened, when the tombs are opened, that's that moment. And that's the law of time. The discovery of the law of time represents the moment when we go from here's the conscious right here, because we have moments of consciousness. We have workshops on consciousness. Say different techniques. Can you stay conscious? Okay. How long can you stay conscious? Which technique will help you stay conscious the longest? And then once you've stayed conscious that long, what will you do with your consciousness? So those are like the conscious. The unconscious is like the ocean, and when we have conscious moments, we're like the fish coming out of water for a moment, and then back in. That fish can't stay out of the water very long. And then splash, back in it goes. Okay. So the discovery of the law of time defines this situation so we can see, I see, we've been in the cosmic unconscious, and we're keeping ourselves in the cosmic unconscious by not being able to break out of all this. I don't care. The Dalai Lama wears a watch. Flies planes. I don't care who they are. They're all in here. And there's a whole other stage and level to go to. And that's to realize this whole system and this whole situation and say, oh, okay, that's it. The law of time has defined that we're all in this trap. We're all in this institutional trap. The Dalai Lama's trapped by politics to always have to think of Tibet. Everyone's in that trap. Shamans come out of the woods and pretty soon they're wearing watches and charging $1,000 for workshops. We're all in this trap. So the law of time, the discovery of the law of time says, this is the trap. We haven't known about time, but now with the discovery of the law of time, we know about it. It's not anything we thought it was, and it has a whole other mathematics. So from the discovery of the law of time, the cycle continues up in this direction to this quadrant where we go from consciousness to continuing consciousness. The tools of the law of time are to help establish continuing consciousness. Yesterday was 7 hand, today is 8 star, tomorrow is 9 moon. Okay, and that gives us little points there, and we understand pretty soon. There's some people I know who got that Tzolk'in memorized. Ching, it's in their brain. Okay, that's good. That helps continuing consciousness. So we go from continuing consciousness, and we're entering the realm of the cosmic conscious, which is the 1320, pure 1320 frequency. And that defined here from 1260 civilization to 1320 Pan. Pan defined as the planet art network understood as the realization of the noosphere. The Earth is a work of art. Okay, the network of consciousness on the Earth is a planetary network that creates the whole Earth as a work of art. Okay, that's the meaning of Pan, and that's the entry into the cosmic conscious. And we go into what's called the hyper-organic realms, because the evolution, the material evolution, stops at this point. Biological material evolution goes up to this point, but with the discovery of the law of time, then evolution goes into the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th dimensions. The 3rd dimension is just a base. We were sent down here for a test. We weren't sent down here to perpetuate our bodies in cemeteries, be mummies, go to the mummy museum in Egypt and see all the mummies. That's not why we were sent here. We were sent here to learn the lesson, and the lesson is precisely the lesson you're learning right now. And see if you can begin to understand the next stage of evolution into the 4th dimension. The 4th dimension is called the hyper-organic evolution, where it is our sense organs that evolve. Okay. Our sense organs that evolve. Like Milarepa said, the famous Tibetan yogi said to his disciples when he was about to pass into nirvana, he said, rather than build statues and stupas in my honor, raise high the banner of meditation and develop your cosmic perceptions. I understand there's now a big contest to build the biggest Buddha statue in the world, which is so far from what the Buddha taught. It's unbelievable. There's a competition for that. We were in Hong Kong, and someone took us to Lantau Island and said, we have the biggest Buddha in the world, and there's a big mural by the Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce. And now the biggest Buddha in the world is going to be in India. Okay? Hey, that's missing the point altogether. Absolutely. It's the development of cosmic perception. Okay? That's why we're here. So that gets us, we go from third dimensional space travel. You know, we've gone as far as we can go with our tin cans in space. They go out there and the NASA won't let you see what they saw anyway. But we know what they saw. Remember? I'm Dr. Arcturus. I've been there already. So we're going to be going into fourth dimensional time travel. And that's a whole other phase of evolution. Then when we reach the peak of that, then we turn inward into the subliminal phase of consciousness. The angels exist in this realm, in the subliminal realm. They're a function of subliminal feedback. The angels are what are called also like the Maha Bodhisattvas. And that they're the ones who are watching all this stuff over here. They can be contacted, but only if you're pure, and they won't let you know that they've received your message either. So then we come to source. This is when we come to the point of supernova. This is the hyperdimensional time of pure mind, and then in terms of stellar evolution, then we get to the point of the supernova. Well, that's the description in a nutshell of the evolution of time as consciousness, the 260 postulates of the dynamics of time, which Bolonik reads every morning, refer to this whole process, and we'll talk about that later as well. When we talk about the 1320 time as the 1320 constant, it is depicted in this form here, which we also know as the Tzolk'in. Okay, all the archaeologists, they can never figure out, what is this Tzolk'in? Why do we have that 260-day cycle? It's not quite the same as the cycle of birth. It's a few days short. What's that about? Well, what it's about is that the galactic Maya left that as the clue. That is the 1320 timing frequency gauge and index. Okay, so that everything that happens, whether it's in any of these realms here, is a function and factored by the 1320 frequency, which is mathematical constant, it's a fourth-dimensional mathematical constant, and is graphically presented in this form of the tzolk'in, as we call it, or the says here the 1320 fourth-dimensional timing matrix. And this is realizable through the fourth-dimensional tools, the 13-moon calendar, the dream spell, etc. And through it, through the 1320 timing frequency, then there arise, everything passing through that, there arise, because this is the law of time, there arise infinite numbers of what are called time vector potentialities. And it's the time vector potentialities that inform life at this very moment. Okay? If we are still conscious, that then we are actually right down here. That's the vector point potentiality, the body in time. This, from the point of view of time, this little spot right down here actually is space. Vernadsky also said it. He said, from the point of view of time, space is an infinitely locatable point. We think space is vast. You know, we have our, on the other side of this, you have huge, vast depictions of the universe and in relation to what we are in relationship to that, which is really nothing. But from the point of view of time, space is an infinitely locatable point. What does that mean? That means only your mind, your consciousness occupying your body is aware of time. That's you. That's you right there. You're the body in time. Yeah. That's and time from time comes down, informs you. It gives you your little cycle, you know, where you can fritter your life away, or you can delve into philosophy and try to understand what it's about, or become religious and spiritual, or whatever you want. But you're that little body, you're that little point there. When you become aware, well, everything that's shown on all these big maps of the universe, it's only your perceptions. That space really doesn't extend farther than your perceptions. Right? And the knowledge of time occurs to your little point in space. That's why space from the point of view of time, space is an infinitely locatable point, and that point is your consciousness in your body in time. And it is your consciousness in your body in time that then is capable by its consciousness of receiving various time vector potentialities, or what are called celestial harmonics, sliding scale of different levels of time realization. This is new knowledge. You can't try to put this into an old bottle. You have to sit with this knowledge. This is the point of view from the law of time, from the fourth dimension. Our evolution is vertical. Our evolution is literally through higher consciousness, through understanding our own consciousness and awareness in relationship to the environment, this little earth, a teeny-weeny little earth where we are placed. That little earth, you can't even see that on your galaxy map. Velatropa 24.3. That's the key planet in the experiment that's occurring in the experimental zone. You think you're so big, turning around at, moving through space at whatever it is, 7,000 miles an hour. You're already on a spaceship, and now we're beginning to realize it's a time ship. It's moving through time as well as space. But you couldn't realize that as long as you were in this whole script over here. You could not realize that. You can only realize it once you began to understand the error in time. And from understanding the error in time, if there is an error, there must be something that is correction or correct. This is the correction of the error. So once you can realize that correction of the error, you've realized something very big. It's called the riddle of the ages. It's called the riddle of the ages. To understand what that is. What is time? Time was hidden from us for ages. The secret of time. Because the secret of time was the test that we were given. Can we understand the nature of time? And if we can understand that, can we remove ourselves from the false time? Can we stop the world of the false time and move into the pure world of time as evolving consciousness, the fourth dimensional realm? This is the future of our evolution.
Let's stretch your spines for a moment. Sit up in your chair. Feel your breath. When we say consciousness, it's not just a word. At this moment, I feel it's important to express appreciation for my husband, because as Valum Votan, he actually has just been a vehicle to receive this information. But even more important, as Dr. Arguelles, he has had a tireless sense of humor to let us know he's trying to teach us some very cosmic principles. And sometimes when we are listening, you know, we can get comfortable, or we can get, you know, our mind will wander again and again. Our mind wanders. Gosh, people around me, oh, am I going to see somebody I like at this whole program? Am I here? Did I come here for a reason? What is this about anyway? What are we doing here? It is so important, everyone. If we're going to be conscious, that means awake in the moment, and that we are aware. And in our being awake, we can actually begin to communicate with each other in a very different way, because we can begin to feel love instead of doubt, instead of criticism, instead of antagonism. That list of anti-cosmic, anti-natural, the past and the future. Oh boy, did I make all those mistakes? Oh no, what's the future going to bring? Time is money. I'll never have enough money. I never have enough time. Technology, it's going faster and faster. Do I know enough about my computer? Oh God, it broke down again. Oh no, I got to call up that computer guy and have him come out again, and that's going to cost me money. Oh my gosh, and then what am I going to do? Oh, my email, it's backed up now, and that email has become so important in my life that I run to my machine every day to check the email. Is anybody noticing me? Oh my God, I'm getting all this junk now. Wait, what's all this? I'm getting pages and pages of documents on the email. Wait a minute, I'm feeling more and more alienated. Wait a minute, what's the newspaper telling me every day? Oh no, the newspaper is telling me, oh my God. Entropy, institutions, taxes, war, the war machine. Do we need an anti-missile defense system correction? We need more defense in the United States of America. Our stock market is going up, 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 and we're so full and we're so rich. We have so much food on the table, and our restaurants give us so much to eat. Where are we going? Okay. Dr. Arguelles says, maybe there's a cosmic vision. Maybe we're supposed to kind of let go of that little ego that got so caught in the 1260 world, that got so obsessed with itself that it produced daily talk shows where they insult each other, I believe, and wrestling matches where people watch each other blood and gore. And I mean, I think we are, in the United States, some kind of self-obsessed people. What are we doing? Cosmic consciousness? Continuing awareness. What does that mean? If you have a cat or a dog, you can watch them and you'll see continuing consciousness. And your dog and your cat will also teach you a lot about telepathy. And even you'll start to recognize your own telepathy when you move into the natural time again. So we've all been wounded by living an artificial timing frequency. We doubt ourselves. We doubt our intuitions. And because we doubt ourselves so badly, that's why we doubt each other. No wonder we have all this antagonism toward others, because we're not even trusting ourselves, because we're not living in the right time. So, well, with Dr. Arcturus here, I mean, we're very one-pointed. I mean, I appreciate my life so profoundly because God has given me a path that I could never even have imagined as a young child. But somehow I always knew that I was smarter than most of what I was being taught in school. Even in the university, I knew. I said, no, there's still something more. Even when I was almost going to be certified to get a PhD, yes, I was certified in a PhD program until I woke up. And I said, why? Why do I need a credential to authorize myself to be a human being? We need to remember that we are born with a birthright to be human and to have the right to good food, good air, to a full life. And this is something that we have to look again. What the United States of America was built on. It was built on the destruction and the death of the indigenous population, and it was built on the slave trade. We brought the dark people from Africa and turned them into slaves. We have crimed so seriously, and yet we run around and point at the rest of the world for their rights abuse. Meanwhile, while we're yelling at China as having bad record on rights, we are trying to get Starbucks and McDonald's into China. I mean, come on, everybody. We are living in a world of hypocrisy. And I know we keep ending up preaching on this. Dr. Arcturus, I've got to correct my voice a little bit and say, look, I am a guilty human. I admit that I have been helpless over my materialist needs and desires. I would like to join this thing called Earthlings Anonymous, like Uncle Joe says in Surfers. You know, remember Surfers of the Zavuya, another little book Dr. Arcturus sprung on us. In the name of Jose Arguelles, he wrote that one in a week when I was away doing a Jin Shin Jitsu training program for a week. I came back, and there was Uncle Joe and Surfers of the Zavuya. I remember, wow, I read it, and I said, oh my God, I don't know. All the time I was being surprised by this man. But I've lived with him now too long to have any doubt whatsoever. So I am truly a very confident accompanier of Dr. Arcturus, and I listen up when he talks. So he may have a few more words, but I like to listen up when he speaks, and I try to maintain my continuing consciousness. I say to myself, you may think you know this, you may think you've heard it, but every time I can hear it again, and I try and go deeper. Every time I hear it, I try to penetrate my consciousness deeper. Continuing consciousness. Stay with. See if I can even more profoundly know. So, Dr. Arcturus, I enjoy being with you. Here's the microphone.
It's because she's Bolonic, and we're in a navigation tower today, according to the Telectanon. So she's talking like that. Okay? Yes. Well, I have a bit more that I had wanted to do, which I think we'll better save for the afternoon. I wanted to demonstrate to you the vigesimal mathematical system and the Tolkien as the basis of the dream spell. And the vigesimal mathematical system you can find again in your text, 2.9, the dot bar. Yeah. Okay, below the Cartesian grid, which shows the timeline. I'll explain a little bit of that this afternoon, because that basically is the basis of the mathematics of time. As we said, the mathematics of up to this point, our measurements and concepts of time have been based on measurements of space, but to have an actual understanding of the mathematics of time, you must understand a different mathematics. So that's the vigesimal mathematics, which is what traditionally is referred to as the 20 count. The decimal means the 10 count, and the vigesimal means the 20 count. And the vigesimal system, like the decimal system, is based on a 0, so there's positional values. Okay, I can't resist it. Okay. Time is art, you know that part. Energy factored by time equals art, you know that part. When we talk about, which is the good one here, red. When we talk about positional mathematics, you know, when you write 1 through 9, that's all just one digit, okay? Then you get to 10. That's 2 digits. Put that 0 there means that you're dealing with values of 10. You put another 0 there, that means values of 100. Okay, this is called decimal. And then you can decimals like that and say and come up with weird numbers like that. Okay? So the 20 count, which is also referred to as the 019, that's based on what's called the dot bar notation system. This is, again, totally different from this system here. This system is basically like an alphabet. You know, you have to understand that, for instance, that means 5. There's nothing about that says there's 5 apples. Or that this means 4. There's nothing about that tells you that that's 4 fingers. But the dot bar system, 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4, and 5 is a bar, okay? Oh, 4, excuse me. And then 6 is a bar and a dot, 7 is a bar and 2 dots. Today, as we saw, 8 is a bar and 3 dots, 5 and 3, that's 8. That also creates a positional value system, so that whereas this advances by 10s, the vigesimal system advances by 20s. So for instance, 19 is the highest value, looks like 9 in the decimal system. In the vigesimal system, the highest value is 19, which is written 3 bars, 5, 10, 15, and 4 dots. 15 plus 4 is 19, okay? But when you it's interesting, that's written with 7 notational signs, 3 bars and 4 dots, okay? But the only notational signs that exist actually are the dot, the bar, and the 0. When you get to 20, 20 is written like that, because in this, then you're dealing at this level here, where on this level here, 1 dot equals 1. At the second level, 1 dot equals 20, okay? So if you see this right here, 3 dots above the 0, that means 60. 3 times 20, okay? And then you get to the next level. If you're going in the pure value, you go 400, okay? 1 dot is going to equal 400, okay? So if you saw this 1 dot and then 3 dots and a 0, that would be 460, okay? That's just a little preview. We'll do a little bit more with this, and then we'll get to the Tzolk'in and to the dream spell this afternoon, okay? So it's been a great pleasure. You got a great planet, don't blow it, okay?